Man, that Christmas Eve was rough. Not just your typical family drama rough. I'm talking heart-shattered, life-flipped upside down rough. I was sitting on my couch, curled up under a blanket that smelled like old laundry and lost dreams, staring at the snow coming down outside my window. My name's Clara Hayes, and I just found out my husband, Derek, had been sneaking around with some 20-something for 8 months. Yup, 8 months. And the kicker? He waited until Christmas Eve to spill it. Like real nice timing, right? I kept staring at the empty mug in my hands, wishing it was full of something stronger than tea. My apartment felt smaller than ever, packed with memories that suddenly felt like weights around my neck. I'd been married for 27 years, poured my whole damn self into that relationship, and now, nothing. Just frost on the windows and Derek's stupid excuses echoing in my brain. I thought about the past. My nursing career, long hours taking care of people, the late nights, the scrubs and hospital coffee, all that. But marriage had been my identity for so long, and suddenly I had none. No clue who I was. No clue what I was going to do next. Then, out of nowhere, there was a knock at the door. I almost didn't answer it, thinking it was some neighbor, or maybe a Christmas caroler trying to guilt me into singing. But curiosity got the better of me. And I peeked through the peephole. Standing there all awkward and freezing was Derek, holding a bouquet of flowers that were totally the wrong kind. My favorite were pink roses, not red. Classic Derek. Couldn't get a detail right to save his wife. "Clara," he started, his voice all shaky, like he'd rehearsed a speech in the mirror. I need to talk to you." I leaned against the doorframe, crossing my arms. "About what?" I asked, trying to keep my voice calm, but I could feel my blood pressure climbing. "I messed up," he said, stepping closer, shivering in the cold. "I know I made a huge mistake. Jessica isn't what I thought she was. I need you back." I stared at him like he'd just grown a second head. "Wait, let me get this straight. You left me for some 28-year-old, then she dumped your ass, and now you want what? A do-over?" He swallowed hard, looking like a kid caught with his hand in the cookie jar. I realized what we had, what we threw away. "Derek, listen to me," I snapped, my voice louder than I intended. "We've been done since Christmas Eve. I don't need excuses. I need space. I need my life back." And that's when it hit me. The anger, the hurt, the betrayal. All of it condensed into a sharp, clear realization. I didn't need him. I hadn't needed him for weeks, but I'd been too numb to see it. I was done being small for someone else's convenience. I closed the door gently but firmly in his face, letting him linger in the cold, staring after him like a ghost of the life I used to have. And you know what? It felt good. Liberating even. The next 3 days were a blur of tears, iced coffee, and old Netflix shows I hadn't touched in years. But then, something kinda crazy happened. I kept staring at a little card Marcus Wellington had given me a few weeks earlier. His name rang a bell from that charity event I'd gone to back in November. He wasn't like Derek. Marcus actually noticed people, saw value where nobody else did, believed in second chances, not just excuses. The card sat there on my counter, pristine white, bold letters spelling out his number. $120,000 a year. Enough to never worry about money again. To actually have a life that wasn't defined by Derek's screw-ups. And more than that, it was a chance, a real shot at something meaningful. I could take everything I'd learned in nursing, in caring for people, and apply it in a way I'd never imagined. Build something new. Be someone new. I picked up that card at least a dozen times, tracing the letters with my fingertips, like it was some kind of talisman. My heart pounded every time I thought about calling Marcus. Could I really do this? Could I leave my old life behind and step into a future I hadn't dared to dream about? And then, Thursday afternoon, Derek showed up again. At my door, roses in hand. That same fake apology face he always used. I didn't even open the door fully. Just enough to peek through. "I just want 5 minutes, Clara," he pleaded. I sighed. "You had your 5 minutes on Christmas Eve. What more do you want?" He leaned closer, like his closeness would somehow erase the months of lies. "I screwed up, I know it. Jessica, she's not what I thought. I cut him off. "Nope, not listening. I don't need your confessions. I don't need your regrets. You had your shot, Derek, and you blew it." I stepped back, closing the door, feeling the cold snap of winter bite my cheeks. For the first time, I realized something powerful. I wasn't heartbroken. I was free. Free to decide my next move. Free to chase something that mattered. I picked up Marcus's card again, feeling that surge of possibility. With Derek gone for good, the path in front of me felt wide open. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel scared. I felt alive. I dialed the number before I could chicken out. Marcus Wellington's office. A smooth, professional voice answered. "This is Clara Hayes. I want to talk about the position you offered me," I said, trying to sound steady, but my hands were shaking. "Clara, I was hoping you'd call," Marcus said, his voice warm and genuine. "Ask me anything." I inhaled. "First, are you sure about me? Because I've been looking into nonprofit work, and man, there's a lot I don't know." Marcus laughed softly. "Clara, it's not about what you know. It's about who you are. And I've never met someone who sees a need and just fills it like you do." My chest tightened. "So, when do I start?" "How about Monday?" he said. "We'll get you oriented, meet the team, and start building something that actually changes lives." I smiled, letting the excitement bubble up. "I'm ready." For the first time since Derek left, I felt like I could breathe, like I had a choice. And this time, I was choosing me. Monday morning rolled in gray and drizzly, but somehow it didn't feel sad. It felt like the start of something real. I stood in front of my closet, staring at clothes I hadn't touched in years. The cardigans and muted colors I wore for years, blending into the background, while Derek ran his life like it was a game. Gone. Today, I wanted something bold. Something that said, "I'm here, and I'm not hiding anymore." I grabbed a navy blue dress I bought years ago and never worn, because Derek said it was too loud for my age. Looking at myself in the mirror, I realized it wasn't loud at all. It was perfect. For the first time in decades, I felt seen, not by him, not by anyone else, but by myself. The drive downtown was quiet. The city streets slick with leftover snow. My hands gripped the steering wheel a little tighter than necessary. Heart racing, with that mix of nerves and excitement. The Wellington Foundation occupied the top floors of a sleek downtown tower. Glass walls, steel beams, the kind of place that made you feel small and important all at once. The elevator ride up was a blur of my own racing thoughts. Could I really do this? Lead a community outreach initiative for one of the biggest foundations in the country? Could a 55-year-old nurse with zero nonprofit experience actually make a difference here? Mrs. Hayes, a warm voice, interrupted my spiraling thoughts. I turned to see a young woman with a friendly smile. "I'm Samantha Lee, Mr. Wellington's assistant. He's waiting for you in the conference room." Following her down the hall, I passed photographs of past projects. A children's hospital in Guatemala, scholarship programs for urban youth, clean water systems in rural Africa. Each picture told a story of hope and change, a reminder that maybe, just maybe, I could do something meaningful too. Marcus was standing by the windows when I entered, hands clasped behind his back, staring out over the city. When he turned and saw me, his face lit up with that calm, genuine smile that had first drawn me to him. "Clara, you're here. Ready for your first day?" he asked, eyes sparkling. I swallowed the lump in my throat. "As ready as I can be," I admitted. He laughed. "I like honesty. Come, let me show you what we've been working on." The next 4 hours were a whirlwind. Marcus introduced me to the team. 12 people managing everything from grants to programs to finances. They looked skeptical, which I didn't blame them. A middle-aged nurse landing a senior position with no nonprofit experience? Yeah, I'd be skeptical too. "We're kinda reactive," said Janet Morrison, the interim director. "Applications come in, we check boxes, approve or deny, and that's it. Efficient, but impersonal." I nodded. "Sounds like hospitals. Lots of people get lost in the system because no one really sees them." "Maybe we start seeing them?" Janet blinked. "Exactly, you get it." Marcus leaned forward. "I want to change that. We need to be connected to the actual impact, not just numbers on a spreadsheet." Over lunch, Marcus explained his vision in more detail. His late wife had been a social worker. "Charity without relationship is just guilt management," he said. "Rich people writing checks to feel good without addressing the real problem." I thought about my nursing career. I'd seen bureaucracy hurt people. Patients treated like numbers, systems ignoring real suffering. What if we actually went out into the field, talked to the people we fund, not just the programs? Marcus's eyes lit up. "Yes, field research, direct observation. That's brilliant." The week flew by. Each day brought challenges and learning. The staff slowly warmed up as they saw I was listening, asking questions, and not pretending to know it all. I was learning about grant applications, donor relations, budget planning, all of it. But more than that, I was yearning about myself, about what I could do when I stopped shrinking to fit someone else's expectations. By Friday, my old life came knocking again. Samantha poked her head in. "Mrs. Hayes, there's a man here. Says he's your husband." My stomach did that weird flip. "Derek." Of course. I took a deep breath. "Send him in, please." He walked into the reception area, all uncomfortable in the sleek modern space. Suit pressed, tie matching the one I'd given him for his birthday. Still looked messy compared to everything around him. "Clara." He tried that old charm, but it fell flat. "This place, it's amazing. How did you even..." I got offered the job, I said, calm but firm. He blinked, confusion spreading across his face. I want to talk about us, our future. I crossed my arms. We don't have a future. I made that very clear. His tone turned condescending, like always. You're letting emotions drive your decisions. Be realistic. This foundation life, it's not real. You'll come back when they see who you really are. Before I could reply, Marcus appeared. His presence shifted the room immediately. Derek took a step back, caught off guard. Everything okay here? Marcus asked, calm but firm. This is Derek Hayes, my ex-husband, I said. Derek's jaw dropped. Respect, maybe a flicker of regret, crossed his face. He glanced at me, then at Marcus, realizing he wasn't the one calling the shots anymore. After he left, I felt a quiet satisfaction. That old life, the one where I shrank and hid, was truly behind me. I had a path now, a future shaped by my own hands, and for the first time in years, I felt unstoppable. By Monday afternoon, I was officially in my groove. My little temporary office overlooked the city skyline, sunlight glinting off the glass towers like it was cheering me on. Somehow, it didn't feel like work. It felt like purpose. For the first time in decades, I wasn't just clocking in to survive. I was clocking in to make a difference. The first item on my agenda was shaking things up with the grant review process. We weren't going to just accept applications and check boxes anymore. I wanted to see the people behind the programs, the kids in classrooms, the families at shelters, the community leaders hustling to make a dent in hopeless situations. It wasn't going to be easy. Some of the staff eyed me skeptically. Clara, you're proposing we visit all these organizations in person? Janet asked, raising an eyebrow. Yes, I said, leaning on my desk. Numbers don't tell stories. People do. And if we want to help, we need to see what's actually happening. Her mouth opened like she wanted to argue, then closed. Something clicked, like she realized I wasn't joking. By Wednesday, I was out in the field for the first time. Driving through neighborhoods I'd only seen on the news, meeting people whose lives were messy in ways I'd never understood from a hospital room. Teachers juggling classrooms of 30-plus kids, buying supplies with their own money. Volunteers running shelters with grit and patience I'd never known I could appreciate. One moment hit me hard. I was standing in a tiny community center that barely had electricity, talking to a woman named Rosa, who'd grown up in that neighborhood and now ran programs for kids after school. She told me stories about the barriers her students faced: food insecurity, gang pressures, lack of mentors, and then she shrugged, like it was just life. That's why we do what we do, I said quietly, feeling something shift in my chest. You're the ones keeping hope alive. Rosa blinked. No, Clara. You see it. That's the difference. People don't usually care enough to look. I left that day feeling something I hadn't felt in years. Alive. Not just surviving, not just coping, but alive. Like I had a reason to get out of bed that had nothing to do with someone else's approval or a paycheck that barely mattered. Back at the office, Marcus had noticed my energy shift. You okay? He asked over a cup of coffee in the corner of the conference room. Better than okay, I said. I feel like I'm starting to actually do something that matters. He nodded. That's exactly why I knew you were the right person for this. You don't just see the problems, you see the people behind them. The week continued like this, a mix of learning and action. Every day I discovered something new about the foundation, about its staff, and about myself. I realized that my years as a nurse weren't wasted. They had taught me to notice the little things, to read people, to care in a way that bureaucracy couldn't measure. By Thursday, I was leading a small team to plan a pilot project in one of the toughest neighborhoods in the city. We were going to provide job training, after-school programs, and mental health support all in one place. The challenge was massive, but instead of scaring me, it lit a fire. That evening, driving home, I caught sight of the roses Derek had left months ago, brown and brittle now, scattered by the wind. I felt a pang, then smiled. Not bitter, not sad, just done. That chapter had ended, and now my story was mine to write. At home, I started mapping out my schedule for the coming week. I wasn't just Clara Hayes, Derek's wife, the good nurse, the woman who faded into the background. I was Clara Hayes, Director of Community Outreach, someone capable of real impact, someone who finally understood her own worth. Saturday brought unexpected news. A local news crew called, wanting to cover our pilot project. I was nervous. Media had always terrified me. But Marcus encouraged me. "You've earned this," he said. "Stand tall." Standing in front of the camera, talking about our vision for the community, I felt the words flow naturally. I wasn't selling a project. I was telling the story of people who mattered, stories that needed to be heard. For once, I wasn't hiding. I was seen. Later that night, alone in my apartment, I sat by the window, sipping tea. The city lights twinkled like 1,000 tiny sparks of possibility. I thought about everything that had led me here, the heartbreak, the betrayal, the endless years of putting everyone else first. And I realized I didn't regret any of it. All those moments had shaped me into someone who could step up now, someone who could finally lead instead of follow. And then, unexpectedly, I felt it, a flicker of excitement for what could come next. Not from a man, not from Derek, not even from Marcus. From me. My courage, my vision, my own stubborn insistence on seeing the good in the world and fighting for it. It was a small, quiet victory, but one that felt enormous. I was no longer living in the shadow of someone else's life. I was making my own, and for the first time, I knew, truly knew, that whatever came next, I was ready. Monday hit hard. Not like Heartbreak hard, but real life hard. The pilot project we'd been planning was officially kicking off, and for the first time, I felt the full weight of responsibility landing squarely on my shoulders. I wasn't just running a desk anymore. I was running lives. And that was terrifying and exhilarating all at once. The first site visit was to a local community center tucked in the heart of a neighborhood that'd been ignored by everyone with power and money. Rusted swings, cracked sidewalks, graffiti on the walls. Kids ran around barefoot, some clutching worn-out backpacks. Volunteers hustled everywhere, juggling endless tasks with a calm desperation I recognized from my nursing days. "Clara, over here!" Rosa waved from the courtyard. I jogged over, feeling my heart pound. "Ready to meet the crew?" "Orn ready," I replied, trying to sound confident. Inside, though, my stomach did somersaults. I'd been in hospitals, sure, but this was different. These weren't patients who came in for care. They were humans living every second of struggle outside my neat, controlled nursing world. We spent the morning unpacking supplies, setting up classrooms, and listening to the volunteers. Every story I heard made my chest tighten. A single mom juggling 3 jobs. A teenager caring for her younger siblings while trying to finish high school. An elderly man teaching gardening classes to keep the neighborhood green. At lunch, I sat on a weathered bench, eating a soggy sandwich, and just watched. Kids laughing despite everything. Volunteers smiling despite exhaustion. And Rosa, she was glowing, showing me the tiny victories that nobody ever noticed. That was the moment it hit me. This work wasn't about prestige or reports. It was about hope. By mid-afternoon, the kids had settled into the programs we set up. Art classes, literacy games, and even a mini science experiment corner. I caught one little girl staring at me wide-eyed as she tried to build a tiny volcano from baking soda and vinegar. I knelt down beside her. "You're doing it," I said. Her grin stretched ear to ear. "I know," she squealed. "It's like magic." Magic. That was what it felt like. Watching these tiny sparks of possibility flicker to life. The same spark I'd felt when Marcus had handed me the boots that first snowy night. It wasn't just about fixing problems. It was about igniting belief that change was possible. That evening, back at the office, Marcus was waiting. "How's the first day?" he asked, leaning casually against my desk. "Intense," I admitted, "but amazing. Seeing it all in action, I get it now. This is what we're really here for." He nodded, a small, proud smile on his face. "I knew you'd see it this way. Most people would have looked at this mess and run for the hills. You didn't. You rolled up your sleeves and jumped in." I laughed, though it was more of a release than amusement. "Yeah, well, I've had practice dealing with chaos." The week blurred into a whirlwind of meetings, site visits, and planning sessions. I learned quickly that being a leader wasn't about knowing everything. It was about listening, being adaptable, and trusting the people around you. And slowly, the staff began to trust me back. The skepticism faded, replaced by collaboration. One afternoon, Janet came into my office, a stack of papers in hand. "Clara, I have to admit, I didn't think you'd pull this off. But you're changing things. People are noticing." I felt a heat rise in my chest. Not pride, not arrogance, just validation. I'd spent years being told I was too emotional, too soft, too much. Now, my softness was exactly what made me effective. Friday evening came, and I was exhausted. My feet ached from walking the neighborhood all day. My brain felt fried from decisions and problem solving, but there was a satisfaction in that tiredness I'd never known. I sat in my apartment, sipping a mug of tea, thinking about how far I'd come. And then my phone buzzed. A text from Marcus. "You're doing more in 1 week than most people do in a year. Proud of you. M." I smiled, fingers hovering over the keyboard, wanting to write something back, but realizing words weren't enough. I just stared out the window at the city lights, feeling the pulse of life beneath them. Saturday brought a small miracle. One of the local kids, a boy named Eli, came running up to me, holding a small plant he'd grown in the garden section of the center. "I grew this for you, Clara," he said, eyes shining. I knelt down and accepted it. "Thank you, Eli. I'm gonna take really good care of it." That tiny gesture reminded me why I was here. This wasn't about accolades or money. This was about planting seeds, literally and figuratively, and helping them grow. By the end of the month, the pilot program had already begun showing results. Attendance was up, volunteer engagement was skyrocketing, and the kids' grades and confidence were improving. And me? I felt alive in a way I hadn't felt since, well, ever. That Sunday, I drove through the city, windows down, hair whipping in the wind, blasting an old playlist I'd almost forgotten I loved. For the first time, I wasn't running from something. I was running toward everything. And somewhere in the back of my mind, I realized I hadn't just found my purpose. I'd found my power. And nothing, not Derek, not the years of heartbreak, not the fear of starting over, could take that away from me. Monday morning hit like a freight train. Not that I was scared, well, maybe a little, but more like, this is it, Clara. Show them who you really are. I pulled on my favorite navy blazer, the one I bought years ago and never worn because Derek said it was too flashy for someone your age. Yeah, okay, Derek. Flashy is exactly what I needed today. The Foundation's conference room buzzed with the usual Monday chaos. Grant applications stacked in towers that threatened to collapse at any moment. Staff rushing around with clipboards and laptops, phones ringing off the hook. I took a deep breath, centered myself, and walked in like I owned the place. Funny thing, I did own it, in a way I never had a desk or a title before. "Morning, team," I called out, and heads turned. A few eyebrows raised, some grinned, some looked skeptical, but I didn't flinch. Today, we tackle our first big project, the East Side Youth Initiative. We're talking mentoring programs, after-school classes, nutrition support, the works. And we're doing it our way. Janet, ever the cautious one, raised an eyebrow. "Clara, this is ambitious. The city council's been dragging their feet for months. Funding isn't guaranteed." I smiled. "Yeah, but that's the thing, Janet. We're not waiting around for permission. We're showing them what's possible. We've got the staff, the volunteers, and the heart. Let's make it happen." The next few hours were a blur of calls, emails, and strategic planning. I met with local school principals, nonprofit leaders, and even a few hesitant city officials. Every conversation reminded me how much I'd underestimated myself. People were listening to me, taking me seriously, trusting my judgment. Me, a 55-year-old nurse who'd spent years blending into the background, suddenly commanding rooms with confidence I hadn't realized I had. Then came the first real test. One of the schools we were partnering with called in a panic. The after-school program's lead coordinator had quit unexpectedly, leaving a gaping hole just a week before launch. My stomach did that flip-flop thing it always did before a challenge. But this time, I didn't freeze. I strategized. "Okay, team," I said, pacing the floor. "We've got a problem. But guess what? Problems are just opportunities wearing ugly clothes. Let's find someone to fill this role. even temporarily. And I mean now. No excuses. We roll up our sleeves and we get this done. Within hours, we had a temp coordinator, backup volunteers, and a solid plan to train them before the kids arrived. Rosa, ever the motivator, looked at me wide-eyed. Clara, I don't know how you're doing this. It's crazy. Crazy? Yeah, maybe. But it's also exactly what we need, I replied, grinning. The launch day came fast, and the East Side Youth Initiative opened its doors to a flurry of excitement and nerves. Kids streamed in, some shy, some bouncing off the walls. Parents hovered, hopeful and skeptical. Staff hustled like pros, and I moved through it all like a conductor orchestrating chaos. By mid-afternoon, something incredible happened. I was walking past the computer lab when I overheard two teenage boys talking. One said, "I didn't think anyone cared about kids like us." The other nodded. "Yeah, but look at this place. Someone actually does." I paused, letting that sink in. That's exactly why I was here. Every ounce of effort, every sleepless night, every ounce of doubt, it all funneled into moments like this. Real, raw human impact. Then came Derek. Or well, Derek Light. He showed up at the gates, out of nowhere, as if the universe wanted to remind me he still existed. "Clara," he said, voice hesitant, like he wasn't sure if he had the right words. I heard about the East Side program. Looks like you're doing a lot." I didn't even flinch. I turned to face him fully, arms crossed. Doing a lot? That's one way to put it. Making a difference? That's another. Which one were you aiming for, Derek? He blinked, clearly not prepared for my new confidence. I just didn't expect this from you." Didn't expect me to succeed? Or didn't expect me to finally care about myself? I asked, letting the words hang like a challenge. He opened his mouth, then closed it again. Classic. Some people never learn. Instead of letting him derail me, I turned and walked back inside, shoulders straight, head high. This was my life now. My work, my choice. And for the first time, I realized I didn't need anyone's approval. Not Derek, not the naysayers, not even my past self. By the time the first week wrapped up, the East Side Youth Initiative was already showing results. Attendance up, kids smiling, parents grateful. And volunteers energized. I finally allowed myself a moment to sit back, sip some lukewarm office coffee, and breathe. Marcus caught me in that moment, leaning casually against the doorframe. "You're killing it," he said, with that half smile that always made my heart skip. "I'm just surviving," I replied, though I knew he didn't buy it. "Nope, you're thriving," he corrected, eyes serious. "And you're showing everyone here what real leadership looks like." I smiled, feeling the warmth spread through me. Not because he said it, but because I knew it was true. I'd spent so long doubting myself, hiding behind old roles and expectations, letting life happen to me. Now, I was finally happening to life. That night I sat by my apartment window, looking out at the city lights. East Side kids laughing in my head, volunteers hustling in my imagination, Marcus's words echoing. I realized something. This was only the beginning. Challenges would keep coming. Obstacles would always appear. But I wasn't afraid anymore. I had grit. I had vision. I had heart. And for the first time in a long time, I had me. By week 6, I thought I had a grip on things. Eastside Youth Initiative was thriving. The team was adjusting to my new rules of hands-on leadership, and even Marcus seemed genuinely impressed with my progress. I felt unstoppable, or at least I wanted to feel that way. But life apparently has a way of reminding you that even the strongest people hit walls. It started with an email from the city council. My stomach dropped when I saw it. Funding for Eastside Youth Initiative in jeopardy. Immediate response required. I swallowed hard and clicked. The city had just slashed our anticipated budget by 40%. 40%. Just like that, everything we'd planned, every program, every staff member's we handled it. This is just bigger. Bigger doesn't mean impossible. Janet finally spoke up, voice shaking slightly. Clara, this is huge. 40% is, I know, 40% is scary as hell, I interrupted. But we don't panic. We strategize. We get creative. We fight for these kids because no one else will. The next 48 hours were insane. I made non-stop calls to local businesses, potential donors, and community leaders. I dug through every grant possibility we'd ever considered and brainstormed ways to stretch our current funds. Marcus helped, offering guidance, but also stepping back enough to let me take the reins. One night, exhausted, and sitting alone in the office, I stared at the stacks of applications and spreadsheets. My head throbbed, my back ached, and my coffee, cold hours ago, sat abandoned on my desk. I thought about Derek for a second. That familiar pang of what if I'd stayed, and shoved it down. This wasn't about him anymore. This was about the kids depending on us. Then came the hardest part. Some of my staff started doubting me. Small whispers here and there. She doesn't have the experience for this. What if we fail? Enough to shake confidence in the room. I caught it like a punch to the gut. I called another meeting, this time standing in the center of the room, like I owned the air. Listen up, I said, letting my voice carry. Yeah, I'm new to this. Yeah, I'm not some fancy nonprofit grad with decades of experience. But I care. I see the kids, the families, the community, and that counts for more than a piece of paper ever could. We're not quitting. We're not backing down. We're going to figure this out. Together. It wasn't easy. Some stayed, some left. But the core crew, Rosa, Janet, a few volunteers, they rallied. And that's when the magic started happening. The kind that reminds you why you risk everything. I made calls that felt like long shots. Local restaurants, small tech companies, even a couple of wealthy retirees known for their quiet generosity. Some said no, some said maybe, and one, a local entrepreneur named Theo, said yes. He offered us enough emergency funding to keep Eastside running, but with one condition. He wanted to sit in on program meetings, to see how every dollar was spent. I hated the idea of extra scrutiny at first, but I swallowed my pride. Theo's check kept us afloat, and honestly, having an outsider's eyes on us forced the team and me to tighten our systems. We became leaner, smarter, sharper. And for the first time, I realized crisis wasn't just chaos. It was a chance to prove we could do more than survive. We could thrive under pressure. But the personal hit was still lingering. Late that night, I sat on my balcony, looking at the city skyline and thinking about Derek. He wasn't even part of this story anymore, but old memories have a way of sneaking in. I realized something terrifying. I didn't miss him. I missed the version of me that let him define my worth. That version was dead. And good riddance. Marcus called just as I was about to go to bed. "How's my fearless leader holding up?" he asked. I laughed, though it was shaky. Terrified, but also weirdly alive. That's the point, Clara. Fear means you're doing something that matters. Just don't forget, you're not alone in this. I've got your back. The team's got your back. And more importantly, you've got yourself. I smiled, leaning back in my chair. For the first time in weeks, I actually believed it. I was tired. Yeah. I was stressed. Yeah. But I wasn't defeated. Not yet. The week ended with a small victory. Theo's funding stabilized the program for another 6 months, giving us breathing room to plan bigger moves. Kids laughed, volunteers high-fived, and for a moment, the chaos felt worth it. As I left the office Friday night, the city lights reflected off the wet streets from a recent drizzle. I walked slowly, savoring the feeling of having faced the storm and still standing. I thought about all the setbacks, Derek, the divorce, my own doubts, and realized they were nothing compared to what I was building now. And as I unlocked my apartment door, tired but triumphant, I knew one thing for sure. Hitting the wall wasn't the end. It was just the beginning of something bigger. Because when you fall hard, you get to rise. By the start of the second year, Eastside Youth Initiative wasn't just surviving, it was thriving. The programs were running smoother. The kids were showing real progress, and our team had grown into a tight-knit, unstoppable crew. I loved the work. The late nights, the chaos, the tiny victories that felt like world-changing moments. But something else was creeping in. Something that made my chest flutter in ways spreadsheets and meetings never could. Marcus. I tried to ignore it at first. I really tried. Professional boundaries, right? I told myself it was all admiration, gratitude, respect. But every time he smiled at me, every time his hand brushed mine while we passed files or reviewed program reports, it felt electric. And worse, it felt mutual. One Friday evening, after a grueling week of site visits and budget adjustments, Marcus invited me to join him for coffee at the cafe in the community center. "Just us," he said. His tone wasn't businesslike. Not really. There was an edge of something softer, warmer, that made me nervous in a good way. I agreed, though my heart was pounding like I'd just run a marathon. We sat across from each other, cups steaming in front of us, the smell of espresso mingling with the faint scent of new paint from the renovated center. Marcus looked at me, really looked, and I felt a flush creep up my neck. "You know," he started, "I've watched you handle this place like a hurricane and a calm summer day rolled into one. You see the chaos, you step in, and somehow you fix it all." I laughed, but it was nervous, unsteady. "I don't fix everything. I just Try to make it a little better than it was before. That's the thing, he said, leaning forward slightly. You don't just make it better. You see it. You see the people behind the numbers, the kids behind the applications, the families behind the chaos. Most people don't notice. Most people don't care. You do. And that's rare. I felt something in my chest tighten, a mix of pride, warmth, and that fluttery nervousness again. I looked down at my coffee, suddenly self-conscious. Marcus, you make it sound like I'm some hero or something. I'm not. You don't need to be a hero, he said softly. You're just you. And me, I'm lucky enough to be around you. The words hit me harder than any compliment I'd ever received. For years, I'd felt invisible, overlooked, dismissed. And here was someone remarkable, seeing me for exactly who I was. Not just my experience, not just my work, but me. That night, we walked through the courtyard together. The city lights flickered off in the distance. But here, surrounded by the garden and the laughter of kids leaving after after-school programs, everything felt quiet, intimate. I don't even know how to do this, I admitted, voice barely above a whisper. Dating again? Opening myself up? It's scary. Marcus stopped and turned to me, his expression serious but tender. I know. And I'm not asking you to jump in blindly. I'm just here, walking with you, step by step, if that's what you need. I nodded, feeling the weight of the past year, the heartbreak, the chaos, the triumphs, and realizing I could take a step. Not alone, but with someone who respected the pace I needed. Meanwhile, at work, challenges kept coming. Theo, the entrepreneur who had bailed us out during the budget crisis, began demanding more detailed reports and progress updates. He wanted data, spreadsheets, measurable outcomes, which was fine, but with a rapidly growing organization, it meant I was constantly balancing hands-on community work with behind-the-scenes strategy. My days stretched into nights, and sleep became a luxury. One afternoon, while reviewing grant applications in the office, Rosa came in, a worried frown on her face. Clara, we've got an issue at the Eastside Tech Lab. The computers are outdated. Half the software licenses expired, and some of the kids are losing access to online programs. I ran my hands over my face. How did this happen? I thought we'd updated everything last quarter. It fell through the cracks, Rosa admitted. I don't blame anyone. It's just, we need a plan. I groaned, feeling the familiar twinge of stress. Okay, let's prioritize. I'll call the vendors, see about emergency licensing, and we'll figure out a temporary solution for the kids. By the end of the day, I was running on fumes. Marcus called just as I was about to collapse onto my couch. Hey, hero, he said playfully. Dinner? I laughed, but it came out hollow. I can't tonight. Computers at the tech lab are a mess. Fumes breathing down my neck. I haven't seen a minute of peace all day. Clara, his tone softened. You can't do everything alone. You're amazing, yeah, but even the strongest people need a hand. Let me come over, help out, or at least make you some food. You need to breathe. I hesitated, then realized he was right. I was letting responsibility consume me. Okay, yeah, come over. But no judging my takeout disaster. By the time Marcus arrived, I was sprawled on the couch, half-eaten Thai food on the coffee table. He just laughed, sat beside me, and helped me strategize a plan for the tech lab while making sure I actually ate something. That night, I realized something crucial. Leadership wasn't about doing everything yourself. It was about seeing your team, seeing your community, and sometimes seeing when you need help. And love? Well, love was similar. It didn't mean giving up your independence, but it did mean letting someone in. Letting someone see the chaos, the triumph, the mess, and still choosing to stay. As we stood together on my balcony, sipping wine and watching the city lights reflect on wet streets, Marcus slipped his hand into mine. "We've got work to do, both here and out there," he said, nodding toward the community center. I squeezed his hand back, a smile tugging at my lips. Yeah. But for the first time, it feels like we can handle it, together. And in that moment, I knew it wasn't just the foundation that was growing. It was me, my courage, my confidence, my heart. And maybe, just maybe, it was love too. It was a crisp spring morning, the kind where the air feels alive and possibilities hang in every breath. Today was the official grand opening of the East Side Youth Initiative's new community hub, and I felt a mix of nerves, pride, and that fluttery excitement that had become familiar around Marcus. I pulled on a teal wrap dress, bold, confident, a far cry from the muted blouses and cardigans I used to hide behind. My hair was shorter now, styled just enough to feel polished but not contrived, and my makeup highlighted the eyes that had seen heartbreak, struggle, and triumph. For the first time in my life, I felt fully seen and fully myself. The center was buzzing. Volunteers were arranging chairs, the media crew was testing cameras, and kids were darting around, full of energy and curiosity. Silence. Every corner of the building screamed progress. A computer lab humming with activity. Classrooms filled with colorful charts and inspirational quotes. A new playground shining in the morning sun. I spotted Marcus near the entrance, chatting with Rosa and the program coordinators. He caught my eye, and that smile, the one that had haunted my dreams and warmed my coldest nights, spread across his face. I waved, and he immediately excused himself from the group to meet me. "You ready for this?" he asked, slipping his hand into mine. "As ready as I'll ever be," I replied, squeezing back. Our first guest was a local city councilwoman, followed by donors, community leaders, and a scattering of news crews. Each person I greeted, each hand I shook, felt like a reaffirmation. This wasn't just a building. This was change, tangible and powerful, a direct reflection of the work we'd poured our hearts into. During the opening ceremony, Marcus gave a short speech about vision, compassion, and investing in people rather than programs alone. Then it was my turn. My stomach fluttered as I approached the podium, the microphone cold in my hands. "I used to think my life was over," I began, my voice steady despite the nerves. "I thought I was too old, too ordinary, too tied down by mistakes and heartbreak to start over. But I learned something important. It's never too late to become who you're meant to be." I scanned the crowd and spotted familiar faces. Rosa, the volunteers, the kids whose lives were changing because someone believed in them. My eyes found Marcus, standing a few rows back, and the warmth of his gaze grounded me. This center isn't about me, I continued. It's about all of us, about second chances, about believing in people who don't always get seen, about taking small acts of kindness and letting them grow into something extraordinary. And most importantly, it's about realizing that even when life throws you off course, you can still find a way forward. Applause filled the room. Not just polite claps, but genuine acknowledgement. I felt tears prick my eyes, but I didn't try to hide them. These weren't tears of sadness. They were triumph, gratitude, and a fierce joy that only comes from hard-won victories. After the speeches, people toured the center. I wandered through the computer lab, watched kids play in the courtyard, and saw parents chatting with counselors. Marcus stayed close, but gave me space, letting me take in every moment. By the time we reached the garden courtyard, the sun was high, casting warm light over the flower beds and vegetables volunteers had planted. I leaned against the railing, letting myself breathe for the first time all morning. "You've outdone yourself," Marcus said, joining me with 2 cups of coffee. "I've seen you grow this place, grow yourself. It's incredible." I smiled, taking a sip. "We've done it together, and you've been there every step, quietly cheering me on, reminding me I could do more than I thought." He reached out, brushing a stray strand of hair behind my ear. "I've been meaning to tell you something, officially. These past months, working alongside you, seeing your courage, your vision, I've fallen for you, hard. And I don't want to wait another minute to ask, will you be mine? Not just as a partner in the foundation, but in life?" My chest tightened, my heart pounding. "Marcus, I thought I'd never find someone who sees me, really sees me." "I do," he said simply, "every day, and I want to keep doing it for the rest of our lives." I laughed, a happy, unrestrained sound, and threw my arms around him. "Yes, absolutely. Let's grow this world together." We spent the rest of the day mingling, celebrating, and watching the community embrace the center. Rosa stopped by, her eyes shining. "Clara, this is beyond anything I imagined. You've given us hope, dignity, and a place to thrive. I can't thank you enough." "You don't need to," I said, feeling a swell of pride. "You're the reason we do this. You all are." As the crowd thinned and the sun dipped lower, Marcus and I walked through the courtyard, barefoot on the cool grass. The air smelled of flowers, soil, and the faint buzz of a city alive with possibility. "Remember my mom's silver coin?" I asked, recalling the piece of wisdom Marcus had shared months ago. "Kindness is the only investment that never fails." Marcus grinned. "Yeah, turns out it works even better when the kindness comes from you." We found a bench among the vegetable plots, the same spot where months ago we'd sat after a long day, sipping coffee and dreaming big. I leaned into him, feeling the warmth of the day, the fulfillment of a life rebuilt, and the promise of everything yet to come. 3 years ago, I said softly, I never would have imagined this life. But I can see now, giving away my boots that snowy night, stepping into the unknown. It was all leading here. Marcus squeezed my hand. "You weren't being thrown away, Clara. You were being set free. Free to be yourself, free to find love, purpose, and a life that matters. And you did it, I smiled, eyes reflecting the fading light, the life I had built, the love I had found, and the community we were nurturing. And this is just the beginning. As night fell, the city lights flickered on, the community hub glowing warmly in the twilight. Kids laughed in the distance, volunteers tidied up, and I stood there, hand in Marcus's, feeling the fullness of a journey that had begun with heartbreak and ended in hope. Sometimes the worst days lead to the best lives. Sometimes giving to a stranger, stepping into the unknown, and refusing to settle is exactly what you need to find yourself. And sometimes if you're brave enough, you build something beautiful and discover a love that feels like home.